If you want to stop the video right now, you don't even have to learn about the Pocket 3S. No, I call it the Pocket 3S because it really wasn't that big of an upgrade. I think it should have been called the 3S, not the 4. I mean, in 3 years, what do we get? A LED light? All right, I'm going to do two things in this video today. I'm going to tell you very clearly that I was right 3 months ago when I said we aren't going to see any more DJI cameras coming into America, and that's because they are banned. They are on the covered FCC list, and we will talk about what that means and why I truly do not believe we will see a Pocket 4, at least not with the DJI logo. And secondly, we're going to walk you through some of the day one reviews. And it's really interesting this time because typically you can kind of throw those out the window, but there's a lot of creators that either one, decided not to take the sponsorship so they could give their honest opinion, or two, got sponsorships or a free camera but are still giving you the truth, and I appreciate that. But first, let's start off with my prediction almost 3 months ago. Oh boy, yesterday was a doozy for sure. We saw the complete ban of DJI products in the future for sales in the United States. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. They're kind of focusing on the drones, but we've already kind of had that. But now this is very clear that it's not going to stop just at drones. It's going to affect things like their action cameras in the future. Now, for some of you all that watch this channel for cameras, the big thing is the new Pocket 4. And now, because we saw the ban, what's going to happen to the Pocket 4? Well, I am happy to report that the Pocket 4 actually received approval by the FCC back in November. Oh, okay, so I got it half right. I truly did believe that because they received FCC approval for the Pocket 4, that they would actually be able to slide this in. But unfortunately, it looks like, and no pun intended, that the covered list trumps that of the FCC approval. And as it stands right now, there is no plan to import the Pocket 4 to America. And I think people need to be well aware of that. So you can see here, Osmo Pocket 4 is the first true victim of the US government DJI ban. And that's because they have been added to the covered list. And this was done quite a few months ago and really was the impetus of my first video. DJI's entire product line, drones, gimbals, and cameras, was added to the FCC covered list back in December. It wasn't a surprise. The 2024 National Defense Authorization Act, a funding bill passed by Congress and signed into law by then President Biden, set a December 2025 deadline for the government to conduct a security audit of the DJI product line. If DJI failed or no agency completed the audit, its communications or video surveillance equipment would automatically be added to the FCC list of disallowed products, which includes cameras, microphones, gimbals, and drones. As we got deeper and deeper into 2025, it looked pretty clear that no agency was actually going to perform the audit. The change came with a couple of caveats. Equipment sold that was previously approved was exempt, so old drones and cameras can still be used and sold, and carve-outs were made for drones approved by the Department of Defense. DJI states that the Osmo Pocket 4, and this is important, listen up, DJI states the Osmo Pocket 4 will not be available in the US market at launch due to pending FCC authorization. In plain language, that means that the Pocket 4 was submitted to FCC but did not get the okay from the agency ahead of DJI securing a place on the covered list. So again, yes, it did receive FCC approval for the Pocket 4 at least, but because it was placed as a company, as a whole, not just drones. I took a lot of heat and I just did a live stream about this, and even someone popped on and they're like, no, this is only to do with the drones. It's not to do with the drones. Just like I said 3 months ago, it affects everything that DJI sells that has a radio on board. And remember, Wi-Fi is a radio. Bluetooth is a radio. So as it stands right now, it's a moot point. If you want to stop the video right now, you don't even have to learn about the Pocket 3S. No, I call it the Pocket 3S because it really wasn't that big of an upgrade. I think it should have been called the 3S, not the 4. I mean, in 3 years, what do we get? A LED light? Pretty awesome. Now, there are some decent upgrades, and let's walk through those now. We're also going to take a look at some really great creators. I'm not here to poo-poo them. I'm actually really proud of them this time because they are telling you the truth about this product. But again, it's kind of mute because right now, no American can get the Pocket 4. So first and foremost, we're getting better video quality out of the Pocket 4. It's got the same size sensor, but it's got a bit more dynamic range with 14 stops. The other thing about this is it's also going to give you better low light capabilities, which I think is one of a huge advantage for the Pocket 4. You can see it here, and especially if I move this right here out of the way for you, you can see here the clouds. And this really does a good job of showcasing that, yes, it is the same size sensor. However, yeah, it definitely has a bit better in terms of low light. Now, the other area that we're going to see, and I don't think he shows it on here, is an upgrade in the slow motion. We are going from 4K 120 to 4K 240 frames per second, which is a huge upgrade. So if you are someone that likes to do slow motion, then you may want to consider the Pocket 4 for certain. The other areas that we're seeing an upgrade in is better subject tracking. They have an upgrade to that type of system, and I can tell you I use a lot of the active track, is what they call it, subject tracking, especially when I'm vlogging like he's doing there. It just helps to keep your face in frame when you're doing a talking head. But you can also do pretty cool things where you're tracking someone, you know, like in B-roll, walking past on a trail, and I do that quite often. I will say on the Pocket 3, it is quite buggy. So the fact that they've updated the active track, I mean, I think that's a really good thing. The other area that they updated was we're going from a 9 megapixel sensor to a 37 megapixel sensor, which if you're doing stuff like still shots with the Pocket 4, you're going to see a noticeable difference. Again, very much so a use case specific thing. A lot of folks don't use the Pocket for still photography, but if you do, I think this is where it's going to shine the most, going from 9 gigabytes to 37, not gigabytes, megapixels to 37 megapixels. We also saw an update on the controls. We're going to get a couple more buttons. Again, more of a quality of life thing. In the original Pocket 3, they had one joystick. They're adding 2 more buttons so that you can make it a little bit easier to do zoom ins and also pans and stuff like that, moving the joystick. So before on the Pocket 3, you just had one. You'd have to click the screen to switch between using the joystick to either zoom in, zoom out, and then you have to click it in again to do anything in terms of like moving the gimbal itself. So now by adding in some of these buttons, it's just going to make it a little bit easier. They also upgraded the battery to include 20% more power, which means you're going to get 20% longer runtime. Again, I don't know. I think that the Pocket 3 has a pretty good battery, and I've also bought a couple extra of the battery handles for it, and I don't have any problems. I can go days off of 2 of those batteries, so I don't really know if that's a huge thing, but it's a nice thing to have. They also have included something that I really do like, and that is 107 gigabytes of onboard storage. Now, some people might say, whatever, that's kind of kitschy, but I disagree. Many times I have gone out to film something and realized that my SD card is back in my computer. And the reason I say it's a very handy thing to use, because that happened with my Action 6. The Action 6 has onboard storage as well, and it's just really nice. If you don't want to use your SD card, you don't have to. So I think that is a huge advantage as well. There is a bunch of new film emulators, and this is filters that you can put on your footage. And there's 4 of them: pastel, NC, movie, maybe a little bit more than 4, retro. Now you can actually adjust the intensity of these things. I'm not a huge fan of these filters, only because once they're on the footage, they're on, versus like doing something in log or even normal color profile and then applying that in post. This way you can control it a lot more and you can play around with it a lot more. It's good for someone who just does not want to color grade and happens to like this type of stuff, because you are able to adjust the intensity of those filters. But just be aware that that can be a little bit, you know, well, it can cause some problems because it's hard baked into the footage. So use these filters sparingly, but I think it looks pretty good. This is the big addition, I think, that people just love or hate. In 3 years of innovation, we got a little hat on top that gives us an LED light. So yeah, I'm not very impressed personally with this being 3 years. I mean, when we went from the Pocket 2 to the Pocket 3, that was revolutionary. And I love the Pocket 3. I think it's probably one of my favorite cameras of all time. But it remains, look, in 3 years, we got an LED light, bro. All right, now let's take a look at some of these creators and some of their conclusions. We'll start with Jason Vong.
So Pocket 3 is still a phenomenal camera that's still available for purchasing. However, if you have the budget for it and you really need the best image quality possible, especially in low light or grading in D-Log, the Osmo Pocket 4 is a huge leap forward in this department. Either way, you can't go wrong with either one of these, and you especially can't go wrong with Jason Vong.
Well, there's Jason Bond. So he kind of puts it in pretty much how I see it, right? Low light, slow motion. Yeah, you probably see a lot of value there. But in terms of anything else, I don't necessarily know if it was a huge leap forward. And this is Tamara. Tamara is really cool. If I can pull her up, let's listen to her intro here. I think she does a good job of not really shilling either. And she kind of lays it out for you here.
DJI Osmo Pocket 4 is what we have all been waiting for, and since the leap between the Pocket 2 and the Pocket 3 was actually quite huge, we'd expect something pretty astonishing from the Pocket 4, wouldn't we? Here's the thing. I'm not going to sit here and say that the Pocket 4 isn't a good camera, it very much is, but after owning the Pocket 3 for the past few years and using the Pocket 4 these past few months, I wouldn't feel any real urge to upgrade from the Pocket 3, unless a few things are true about the way that you actually film, and I'll get onto those in a sec.
But let's go to her conclusion, because I think you need to, with many of these people, she clearly gets stuff for free. She gets paid. She's a rock star. I'm not joning on her. I think, creators have every right to make money. However, you can see here, she kind of wraps it up on whether or not you should upgrade, and read between the lines, folks, of what she's saying, because she's saying, listen, I don't think you have a need to upgrade, like no need to upgrade with the Pocket 3, but then she goes on to say, but the rest of the time I'm gonna be shooting on Pocket 4. So again, reading between the lines, I think you kind of have to, especially if you're getting paid, for example. So let's take a listen to what she has to say.
Would I upgrade from the Pocket 3 to the Pocket 4? So let's look at it like this, so that no one gets FOMO and you feel good with whatever decision you go for. Let's say my budget was very tight and I was really happy with my Pocket 3 and all the new upgrades were just nice to have rather than essential. I wouldn't stretch myself to buy the Pocket 4. I don't think the leap between the Pocket 3 and 4 is big enough, unlike it was between the Pocket 2 and the Pocket 3. In that respect, I used to say, yeah, it's definitely worth the upgrade. If, however, I knew for a fact that I'd really benefit from improved tracking and love the idea of using film tones and using the camera as a photography hybrid as well, then I would for sure consider the upgrade. But if I didn't have the Pocket 3 at all, so had neither of the cameras, I would most likely skip the Pocket 3 and go straight for the Pocket 4 if budget allowed, because the difference between the Pocket 3 and the Pocket 4 for someone who doesn't own either of them, I think is justified.
I want to break in here real quick, because I don't I don't know about you guys, but here you can see it a little bit, definitely a little bit better dynamic range. Again, you can fix all this in post, in my opinion, but this shot in particular, you can see the difference. But some of these other shots that she had, I don't really think you could see much of a difference.
But again, that is only if budget allows and you're not really stretching yourself, because otherwise the Pocket 3 is still going to be a great camera to use today. Now, if you just need to feel better about the fact that the Osmo Pocket 4 is probably already in your basket right now, then I'm just letting you know that I will be continuing to use the Pocket 4 moving forward and retiring my Pocket 3. Maybe this makes you feel less guilty about your decision to buy the Pocket 4 right now.
See, folks, so again, read between the lines there, all right? Don't hold her too much. She's trying to make her money. Don't shade her for making that money, all right? Now let's go over to one of my favorite creators, Potato Jet. I wanted you to see some of his footage, because up front he goes through and shows the slow motion, and I really do like the slow motion. So we're going to watch just a little bit of his intro, and then I'll get to the conclusion. And he uses a pretty powerful word here, so pay attention.
DJI Osmo Pocket 4, 4K 240 frames per second. They have officially raised the bar on slow motion, their battery, better smart tracking, and all these other things that I'm going to test out. And at the end, I will be sure to tell you the things I love about this Pocket 4, as well as the things I hate about it.
Did you catch that? He said hate. Hate. Now let's take a listen to what he is talking about. They go into it here.
All right, to wrap it up, do we start with the things we love about this camera or the things we hate about it?
I hate that it's similar to the Pocket 3.
What are you talking about? The Pocket 3 is awesome.
It's a great camera, But if you have the 3 and you're using it just to vlog and tell stories, then you're fine with the 3.
My least favorite thing is the fact that there is no taller aspect ratios. You know, with the DJI Action 6, we had a 1x1 square, really useful for people who wanted to get vertical and horizontal shots out of one shot. And you know, DJI did it on the Action 6, so I was like, oh, we'll probably see it here. And we were stuck at 16:9 for 4K. And we do have a taller sensor, by the way. Another thing, when it
That's huge, by the way, what it just said there, because a lot of people I know are really disappointed about that we can't get 4K 19:16. They could have done it really easily. Maybe we'll see it in, you know, future firmware. That's the thing about DJI. They do a really good job of firmware updates. Obviously, again, we won't see it in America, but those of you that are overseas may see this. That was a big misstep by them. They don't really understand what's going on clearly. In social media and everything else. I'm kind of a dinosaur that shoots in this format. You know, if you're shooting horizontal, you're probably a boomer. No, I'm kidding. So vertical format is really big. And I think that was a misstep by DJI.
Okay, so things we love now.
I'm gonna say the tracking is awesome. Internal memory, sweet.
107 gigs.
107 gigs, that's awesome.
I don't even need an SD card most of the time.
Yeah, and that little light, oh, I love that little light.
For me, I would say the 4K 240, just cause it's something I don't even have in my Sony FX3, right? Like if there was a shot I needed to get and I needed really good slow motion, this sits at the top of my arsenal. I mean, above this would be the Ember, right? Like
That's crazy.
Another thing I love also, which I didn't think I would love so much, is the custom button. I use that thing all the time now. Basically, you can take the things that you do the most often and just program it into that button, which I love. It just makes the usability so much nicer.
Okay, folks, thanks for bearing with me. I know this was a bit unconventional, and make sure you check the links down below for all these great creators that I got my data from, and make sure you're subscribed to them because they really are really phenomenal people. But because I'm unlikely to get the Pocket 4, at least in my country, there's much other free countries apparently that these creators are from, so they were able to get it, and I have to rely on them and their footage. And in regards to the ban here in America, well, it is pretty unfortunate, but one of the things that can happen is they could be removed from that list. However, that would mean removing them as a whole, not just for the cameras. But stranger things have happened, and one of the positives is that they do have an FCC filing that was approved. So simply by taking them off of that covered list, that would allow them to instantly be able to sell into the United States market. In regards to the 4, really the TLDR for me is if you have the Pocket 3 and you're looking at the Pocket 4, there may not be a compelling reason to upgrade. If you do not have the Pocket 3 or do not have the Pocket 4, as long as the price is pretty consistent, you can figure out your own tolerance. I would say between $50 and $100 difference. And I do think there's some compelling reasons just to go ahead and get the 4 for sure if you can afford it. But the Pocket 3 is still a really great camera and it is highly capable. But there are some things to note that really do stand out in the Pocket 4. Certainly it has much better slow motion without a doubt. And the tracking is, I've actually been really impressed by what I've seen by these other creators in terms of how much better that tracking is than the Pocket 3. In terms of the image quality, well, yeah, it also looks a lot better in low light, no doubt. And I do think in some situations it is pretty noticeable that even though we have the same size sensor, it definitely looks like to me that it does produce better imagery, better video at times, depending on the situation it's in. I think it does a little bit better with lighting, and I did notice a little bit, I don't know, a little bit more and an increase in that dynamic range, which makes sense from the 14 stops and some other upgrades that this camera does have. So if you are in a country that you can have access to this, I think there are some reasons then to upgrade, but if you have the Pocket 3, like most of these other creators are saying, you might just chill out and wait on this one. Anyways, if you found value in this, please consider liking and subscribing. My name's Hill Phantom, and I'll see you next time.